Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast brought to you by Tacticam. Tacticam is by far the easiest way to begin filming your hunts. Whether it's the budget-friendly solo or the 4K 5.0, Tacticam has something for everyone. You can check them out at tacticam.com. And if you're fortunate enough to have one of the Reveal cell cams by Tacticam, they are doing an update, and they call it the Super Drive Update. If you go to their Facebook page and click on the Super Drive Update, it'll give you all the information on how to do that. But if you do that, over the next 14 days, they're giving away 14 Reveal cell cams. And then that's leading up to them giving away a bow from Expedition as well. So get over to their Facebook page and check it out. And if not, you should probably subscribe to their Facebook page so you can see when those cameras are coming back in stock, because the ones that we have are working very well, excellent battery life, and we really do love them. So you can check those out at tacticam.com as well. Today's podcast, we have Dan Johnson from Sportsman's Nation, Nine Finger Chronicles. He took the unlikely trip from Iowa to hunt Michigan, and we talk about that. We talk about his upbringing as a hunter, his hunting style and how it's evolved, and we talk a little bit about deer management and kind of how the hunter can get involved in that as well. This one was cut a little bit short because Dan was home alone with the kids, so this one's a little bit shorter than our normal podcast, so it just means that we're going to have to do it again. Real fun episode. We really do enjoy it. And we have been working with Spartan Forge this year, so we've been taking a look. Bill was on the podcast, and he outlines how they're using artificial intelligence to track deer movement. And we are working with them this year, and that is about to launch today. So whenever you are listening to this podcast, that is live at spartanforge.ai. And basically it is like the supercharged Farmer's Almanac based on the weather right now, the time of year. It shows you peak rut, moon, everything to generate an idea for your area what the deer movement is going to be like. If it's in the early season, you're looking for normal pattern. If you're in the rut, you're looking for high activity, maybe some abnormal activity as well. So you can check that out at spartanforge.ai, and you can use code BOWHUNTER if you want to check that out for 25% off. spartanforge.ai. Real quick, I'm going to have to shout out to our Patreons. This quarter, I got it all set up. I've got it ordered. We are giving away Mystery Ranch Sawtooth pack. So that's the same pack that I used on my Colorado hunt. I really did enjoy the pack. The only thing I didn't like about it is that it didn't have the lid. So I wish I had like a little bit more place to put quick, easy access items. So I did order the lid as well. So we're giving away the Sawtooth 45 Mystery Ranch pack. That does come with a guide light frame, so you can switch out the pack to a larger pack, a smaller pack. You can use it to haul meat. It's a great system and a super comfortable pack. We're also giving away a set of Badlands Bale rain gear. That was one of the things that people had said that they are reluctant to spend money on, but they really wish that they would pull the trigger on. So we're going to be giving away a set of the Bale rain gear from Badlands. And we're also giving away pro subscription to Basemap. So if you haven't checked out Basemap, you can go check it out for free. They have weekly giveaways that you don't have to pay for. You go on there, and it teaches you to use the app and kind of navigate through that. If you do decide that you want to buy it, I mean, it's $30 for the year, for the entire country. You can download as big of a map as you want to, or I guess as much as your phone will allow. And there's multiple layers. I mean, it is a great app. We've been using it 100% this year, and really love it. but you can save 20% on that by using code Chronicles. So from $30 to $24 for the entire year, it's $2 a month. I mean, it's definitely worth the money. But they're giving away that along with a swag pack, hat, shirt, the whole deal that goes along with that sort of thing. And you can check them out at basemap.com. So if you want to check out any of those giveaways, you can go to patreon.com/Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. Patreon is a crowdfunding for podcasts. So that money goes right back into those giveaways, but it also helps for hosting, equipment, hunts, gear reviews, all of that sort of stuff that is involved in keeping this podcast up and running. And we really, really do appreciate it. But if that's not for you, just tell somebody else about the podcast. Let them know an episode that you've liked, something that you like. Say, man, these guys are terrible hunters, but they're fun to listen to. They're relatable. These guys are idiots. I can't believe they have a podcast. Go and listen. Let them know where they can find us. You can find us on Instagram, YouTube, anywhere that podcasts are. And however you're listening to this, if you really like us or if you really don't like us, leave us a review, because that definitely helps us get in front of more people. So leave us that review, click that 5-star button, click subscribe, and thank you. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. Adam and John in studio once more with another Chronicle podcaster, Dan Johnson, Sportsman's Nation, Nine Finger Chronicles is on the line tonight with probably the most unlikely of hunting trip stories, what not to do, or decisions. How you doing tonight, Dan?
I'm doing good. You guys?
We're doing well. Surviving gun season, waiting for it to be done. So.
Yep. We got Iowa shotgun season in the future. I got like the first week of December here, and I stay home with the family during that time. I used to do the gun hunting, but now I'm just strictly bow hunting until I get too old to not do that. Then I'll probably go back to gun hunting.
Yeah, we're kind of in the same realm.
Yeah.
It's just, and we'll get into it just because of the culture in Michigan, but
right.
My goodness. So, you had said that you're from Iowa, but let's get a little bit of background on you, Dan, for guys that aren't familiar or whatever. Just, your hunting background. Like, so what is your hunting style, and like, how did you grow up and start to get into hunting?
Yeah. So, believe it or not, my outdoor background kind of started with one of my uncles. He used to take me to run trap lines. He took me to do some pheasant hunting. And the first animal I ever killed with a gun, believe it or not, well, I should say, other than a rabbit, my first time ever killing an animal was a pheasant hunt that my uncle took me on. And I was the kid who, if there was a muskrat or a mink still alive in the trap, or a raccoon or a possum, I held the beaten stick. So I was the kid that, oh, he's still alive, go get him, boom, boom, knock him out. And that was my introduction into the outdoors. And then several years after that, I would say probably 9-10 years after that is when I picked up a bow for the first time.
Okay. And then, so you're bow hunting, has it been, pretty much, you're born and raised in Iowa. That's where you cut your teeth then?
Yep. If my memory serves me correct, we got my first bow at a garage sale. And when I said I wanted to, shoot a bow, I had my mom get me this bow, and then at the same garage sale there was all these arrows. None of them were the same, and I didn't know anything about how to set your bow up. Neither did she. And I'm sure the bow was too big or too small, so we went to a shop. He turned it all the way down. I was able to draw it back, and we got a bale of hay from my grandpa, and we set it in the backyards. And at 10 yards out of the 7 arrows, I may have hit it 4 times, and I was like, I'm dialed in, baby. Let's go hunting. So really, everything after that, I had some people guide me along the way, but for the most part, everything on my end is self-taught. I come from a family of, I'm going to say, outdoorsmen, right? My uncles, they hunt, they fish, they trap, but I was, an hour and a half, 2 hours south of where they lived growing up. So anything that had to do with the outdoors was my mom or my dad. And most of it was just like, hey, let's go fishing. So when I started having interest at a younger age in bow hunting, it was all stuff that I kind of taught myself.
Okay. And at that time, like, what was the hunting culture, I guess? Right now everything is mobile hunting, run and gun, and we talked on our last podcast, with these guys like, my father-in-law, with the Baker climbers, you're building them yourself, you're going out and doing that, so people have been mobile forever. How did you start out hunting as far as like the style?
Yeah, my style back in the early days was a 5-gallon bucket that I'd have my bow in one hand, and I'd have the 5-gallon bucket in the other. And in the 5-gallon bucket was a rattling bag and a grunt call and maybe an extra jacket for the night. And I would get out of the car. My mom would, I can remember one of the first times I ever went hunting. Like, we didn't know anything about, hey, you got to knock on permission. You got to knock on a door to get permission. There's hardly any public land where I live in that county, or where I lived back in the day in that county. So my mom would just drop me off on a gravel road. I'd hop a fence and walk into a timber line and just sit there, right? Never ask permission, never nothing. And, I was so young, I can remember looking back one time and seeing the reflection off of the windshield of my mom's vehicle as she just sat there and kind of waited for me to come back. And so on the early days, I was mobile. Like, I was really mobile, if you catch my drift, and sitting on buckets and moving to where I saw the deer print. I didn't know anything about rubs or scrapes back then, and so it was a bucket. And then I would say, fast forward a handful of years, it was your typical field edge ladder stand, and you'd see the deer, but they were never close. And so I would say high school, or into high school and middle school, it was just not understanding anything about deer, but going outside and being outside and sitting on that bucket and climbing that tree, or climbing up into an old rickety ladder stand. That's where it kind of all started.
And so what's the efficacy of the bucket method?
The bucket, there's no method, man. There was never a method. It was, hey, deer live outside. I need to be outside. Well, I can't draw my bow if I'm sitting on my butt, so I need something to sit on. Well, there's the bucket. So that was my first mobile setup.
But I'm just wondering, like, how successful were you? And now that you explained it,
0%.
Okay, so because I'm just picturing you carrying this bucket, shooting a deer on somebody else's land, and like we all know what it's like, tracking a deer, getting a deer out. So I was just trying to figure that out.
Yep, there was a 0% success rate back then.
So how did you keep motivated to keep doing that? Were you seeing deer?
Well, I mean, I was seeing deer, and I even had a couple really close encounters. It was just something that back then, it was just about getting outside. And if I kind of envy that part of me, if I could go back, I kind of envy it, because back then there was no antlers. Antlers didn't mean shit. There was nothing. I mean, you go out and you hunt, and you know. I remember one night I climbed in a tree. this was the first time I ever drew back my bow, and it was late October, and this spike buck was bumping a doe, and he was, she wasn't ready yet, but he was, and I was sitting in the crotch of a tree, and I drew back my bow, and I let the arrow go, and it sliced his just the white hair off of his stomach, and I didn't kill him. I didn't even draw blood, but I thought I was the shit because I let an arrow go on a deer. And I remember collecting that hair in a Ziploc bag, or put it in my pocket, and then put it in a Ziploc bag and keeping it in my room. And so I could tell people about it, because none of my friends hunted, and everybody else did the sports thing, and eventually hunting took a backseat to sports in college and all that stuff. But I don't know. There's something different back then than it is today. Like, I'm a completely different person. I started to learn strategy. I started to learn what deer do, how they behave, and all that stuff. And back then it was just about getting outside and trying to shoot anything.
So, we're kind of like in a weird place right now because we, could be part of the problem, I guess. But, at that time with no social media, no YouTube, you had your magazines and Monster Buck VHS or whatever. What do you think about like today's youth and the amount of information, expectation, all of that? Because, I can tell from the way that you're speaking on it, like that's, some of the most treasured memories are the hunts, because that's when it was fun and a challenge and you were up against yourself versus, what the world says you should be shooting.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, the amount of, I wish I had YouTube back then. I wish I had social media back then, because, it would have allowed me to cut my learning curve as far as strategy and understanding of the animal in half. But I still feel that young hunters, new hunters, need to come up through the ranks. And this is a problem that I had later on in my life when I got back into it really seriously. In order to become a good deer hunter, you got to kill deer. And I feel like a lot of kids today, or even new hunters, like young adults or anybody really getting into hunting, sees the social media, they see the YouTube, they see people starting to pass deer, and they feel that that is what they need to do. Because a lot of the time, this media that's being put out there isn't really going into any details about why they're passing these deer, why they're letting them go. And so people see that, and there's no context behind the imagery. And so any new hunter really will see that and they'll go, well, man, I guess I should pass this doe, or I should pass this spike. When in all reality, they should be slaying the first deer that walks by them for like 2 straight years, 3 straight years, until they feel comfortable around it. And now they can say, okay, so I shot a spike. What do I want to do? What kind of hunter am I? Am I the kind of hunter that goes after age class? Do I want to mount deer? Do I want to fill my freezer? Do I just want to go out and have fun? Like, all these things matter when it comes to kind of defining what kind of hunter you are. And I feel you can do multiple of those things, but I also, like, one thing that really pisses me off is when I see like a 12-year-old holding a 170, and I'm just like, are you kidding me, dude? I've never even shot a 170 before, and this kid now has, he's a kid, right? So a 160 is lower for him. He's going to look at that and he's going, well, he's only a 160. Only a 160, right?
Right.
So
exactly.
once we start putting a number on something and then people judge that experience by that number, in my opinion, it devalues the experience side of things, because people say, well, he's only this, or he's only that, or he's only, whatever. And so that's almost like, hey, I shot a deer, but I'm going to kick him while he's down, because you took this animal's life, but you're gonna cheapen the experience by saying, well, he was only 160 or he was only 3 or whatever, right? It should never be like that.
Yeah, and we can get into that here in a minute when we get into your trip to Michigan. But I want to just kind of move forward in your timeline here and say, like, so now today, what style of hunter are you? You know, are you choosing deer based on age class? Or are you saying I'm hunting buck beds? Are you you got all your deer named and running all the trail cameras and everything? Or like, how do you make that decision on, which life you're going to take,
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think there's times where it kind of changes every year. And a lot of it has to do with time, right? I got 3 kids. I got a business to run. The more time that I have in the timber, the more time I'm given the opportunity to do some of those things, like run trail cameras, set up more tree stands, name deer, whatever. And these days I'm so busy where now it's just, I throw my trail cameras up in the summertime. I get a good inventory, and then I switch those cameras around closer to the hunting season, and that kind of determines what deer are on the property and what I can shoot. If there's no 170s on the property, it'd be pointless for me to go after a 170, right? So I typically either have past experience with homebody deer on the property, or I kind of set my standards. I say, here's the pool of deer in this area. I want to shoot a top tier deer in that pool, if that makes sense.
Sure. And so what are those deer? I mean, so what are you setting your sights on, as far as age class or size or?
Yeah. So I definitely, I definitely would like the deer to be 4 years old, if not older. And, just saying that and saying, like, I don't necessarily like to put a number on anything. If I had to guess, I would say my deer this year would score somewhere in the low 150s. It's not necessarily that I'm going after a buck that's 4-year-old in the 150s. I'm going after a good representation of the highest age class and the highest, in that pool on that farm. So if that big mature buck is a 148 pointer or a 140-10, and he's one of the biggest ones on the farm, well, I'm going to take that. I'm going to try to take that buck if he walks by. But I'm not necessarily making any particular strategic moves for a second-rate deer. I'm not going to say second-rate. The way I talk about Iowa, I have to almost preface it, because nobody else in the nation, especially East Coast, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York, everybody else hears me talk about a 4-year-old or a 150 class buck, and they're saying, Jesus, what is he talking about? It's unrelatable to me, when I'm lucky to be born in the state that I was born in and live in the state that I live in. And I have the ability to hunt those animals. So, I would say a 4-year-old for sure. Next year, it may go higher, because now I've put another notch in my belt on this age class, and who knows what next year's bring. Maybe I'll try to get something bigger and older, or go after a specific buck. But, just kind of whatever's in front of me at the moment. And most of the time, whatever happens is whatever gets me excited. Right? If I see a good deer coming my way and he's all brustled up, or he's chasing a doe, or he's snort wheezed, or he did this and then he did this and then he did that, and oh man, that's a kick-ass story. I'm going to shoot this deer.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm just trying to paint a picture here, because you're right. I was listening to Whitetail Experience podcast today, and they was talking about, this deer's probably 120s, maybe 125, not really what we're going after. And I'm just thinking, man, that's not, our listener base is exactly what you stated, Michigan, PA, a lot of East Coast.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we are relatable because we just shoot whatever, kind of strolls by, and we have a very, or we shoot at them. Yes, this is true too. But like I said, I just wanted to kind of get that there because, when you take these out of state trips, I want to kind of transition the thought process to that. But real quick, so when you're saying that you'd like to target, in a perfect world, 4.5-year-old deer or above or whatever, how many of those are on these properties? So
yeah, and again, I'm talking about the best state to probably in the entire country to hunt whitetails in, right? Mm-hmm. Not only do we have that age class, but we got a good amount of them. So, and it's not like they're behind every tree. You got to work for them, just like you got to work for really any deer. But I mean, I'll put it to you this way, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but I think it was like 2 years ago, I had a really good crop of deer a summer on one of the properties that I hunt. So I had on a collective 1,100 acres that I have access to. Now, when you think of 1,100 acres, don't think of it like I can hunt every acre. We're talking about 600 acres of that is probably ag, right? But collectively, I probably had 7 or 8 deer, 4-year-old or older on that property, on that collective area, which was pretty good, and which is pretty good. So I would say somewhere around that, maybe a little bit lower. This year on camera, I would say the buck I shot, I'm going to put him at 4. My main buck that I was chasing this year was 5, and then there was another one out there that was probably 5 or 6, and then maybe a couple more, maybe 2 more 4-year-olds, and then the rest were 3 and younger that I had encounters with.
Okay, yeah, like I said, I'm just trying to put things in perspective for the listener to say for me to try and target a 4-year-old deer, I mean, I might have to scour counties, where we live here,
Yep.
So like I say, it's just everything is relative.
We might have to go sneak on some a deer farm and bring our bucket.
Right.
What
are these no-knock deals? Heard it from the Nine Finger Chronicles.
Yeah, this guy's giving really shitty advice.
Well, the thought process is correct. His harvest rate was low, so it's kind of a trade-off.
Right.
But so now, how does that affect when you go out of state? Because I know, obviously I want to talk about you hunting Michigan, but you go, I'm sure that you've hunted other states for whitetail, and then you go to South Dakota hunting mule deer. So when you're going out of state, how do you temper that thought process leaving, whitetail Mecca?
Yeah, that's a good question. And what I told myself is this: you got to treat those out of state hunts like you are a brand new hunter. And I say that by saying this. When I went to Michigan, I knew that I'm not going to, not only the time of year that I went, but also the fact that I'm going to one of the most highly pressured states, quote unquote, next to probably Pennsylvania and New York, Michigan, high pressure, everything that I've ever heard about it, right? There's no, was I planning on running into a 4-year-old? No. Did I hunt like I was chasing a 4-year-old? Yes. So I went in with some of the same strategies that I use in Iowa, looking for those terrain features, looking for all that, but knowing that if a 100-inch 2-year-old walked in front of me, I was probably going to take the shot.
And so, I mean, how do you prepare for that mentally? I mean, because for us in Michigan here, like when we go to Ohio or Missouri or, when we were in Idaho, John was in Montana, we were looking for a deer that we couldn't shoot in Michigan. We were looking for, or a deer that we would, love to shoot in Michigan. Whereas coming from Iowa, that's got to be, you're preconditioned, I would imagine, to see that 100-inch buck and not pick up your bow, right?
Yeah, right, absolutely. But this was a new experience for me. So if we can take the focus off the age and we can take the focus off the antler size, we're still deer hunting, right? So that is what I decided I wanted to do. I was going to deer hunt. I was going deer hunting. So I didn't care. I took it all away and I just, went deer hunting.
So let's talk about that experience coming into Michigan. As far as, you had got some information coming into the state. What, tell us a little bit about that. And along with that, like the stereotypes that you heard before you got here. I mean, so I would say it like this. Like, so when we were hunting northern Missouri, 10 miles from Iowa, our excitement level, everything we heard was, super positive. We're just across the river from Iowa. Like, this is where the big bucks are, all of that stuff. So we were going there with this great anticipation, right?
Right.
So what was your thought process and what did you have like going into as far as stereotypes about Michigan and things of that nature?
Yeah. So my stereotype was every parking lot had 10 cars in it. The cars were parked all over the side of the road. I was going to run into hunters every single step into the timber. And luckily that wasn't true. I'll be honest, in my however many days there, I ran into one guy in a parking lot and that was it. And I mean, yes, I was hunting in the middle of the week. Yes, I was hunting in, that mid-October time frame, but I didn't run into anybody. And I was kind of in shock a couple times because I went in preparing myself for, oh, there's a guy, got to move. There's a guy, got to move. So when I was doing my e-scouting, I was looking at all these terrain features and I was walking into the timber going, okay, I want to get to choice 1 first. Okay. And then if someone's there, I'm going to get to choice 2. And then I'm going to get to choice 3. And then I'm going to do, all, this planning in my head, and I just didn't have to do it. So that was kind of a relief.
Do you think that changed the way that you e-scouted? Do you think that you maybe disregarded some pieces thinking that there would be guys set up there already? So you were going to have to go a little bit further, do
Not
a little
really.
bit more? No?
I mean, I was prepared to go, I was prepared to go as far back and do whatever I needed to do to get the job done. Now, the cool thing about this is I had some pretty cool intel going into the hunt, right? I had a guy this dude hunts all the time. He had some really good intel for me. He was telling me things like, he came into the parking area late one day and he couldn't make it back as far as he could. And he saw a bachelor group come right by the parking area. So here he is, like, he's like, dude, you don't have to go 5 miles back. Just, it's almost like he was hunting the people, right? He was wanting to see where they were at. Then he's making a move off of where they were set. So I had those kind of thoughts going into my head, for that upcoming hunt.
Okay. And what about like the terrain and the areas that you were hunting? I guess
River bottom, mostly. There was one little swamp area, but majority of the hunt I was hunting a river bottom ground. That the river was running through it, and then the public land was all over the place. So it was just a drop off into the river bottom, look for some good sign or some terrain features that led up to some, some private ground standing crops and try to get into that staging area or get into that, real close into that transition area or even close to the bedding areas. And, great access, make sure my thermals were doing what they were supposed to do. And it was basically shooting from the hip every time I went into the timber.
And then what did you encounter as far as deer? I mean, rumor has it that you did hit like a 120 class buck that you were unable to recover. So
that's a smart ass comment, and I'll take it. Yeah, let's see, what was my broadhead that day? It was a 2005 Nissan, and I smoked him, but I couldn't recover him. It was I was driving on my way to one of those public pieces, and out of this cemetery, a 120-inch buck pops up, and I smoke him. And it was dark at the time, so I drove on, and I came back and after the hunt to look for the deer to see if I ended up killing him, and I never could find him. So
not enough FOC.
No, not enough. I think my blades weren't sharp enough.
So what did you see for deer while you were hunting?
Yeah, so other than jumping a couple does, like walking in to some of the places from the tree stands, I think I only saw 4 deer and only 1 buck. So it was tough, man. It wasn't, it was something, but again, I had mentally prepared myself for the worst conditions. Like, dude, you're driving 7 hours to not see a deer. And what I liked about these encounters that I had, though, was I put myself in the right spot to shoot a deer, and I didn't shoot what was in front of me.
So that was going to be my question. So with your e-scout and everything, how did that pan out? Once you got boots on the ground, and was there a sign there where you thought it was going to be, and did it look like it should?
Yeah, I'll tell you this. I was surprised. Right, the way people talk about Michigan being such a shitty state to hunt, I was surprised by your guys' cover. I mean, I hunted some places where it was thick and nasty and almost impenetrable in some certain spots. And I got in there, and I'm just like, what are these guys talking about? This is beautiful. And so, I mean, I just was hunting a lot of edge, a lot of transitions into the, from thick cover, opening up into a terrain feature that led up into an ag field most of the time.
Now, like that impenetrable cover, etc., like where you were headed out to, were you setting up in areas just to like see deer? So not in a sense of like on a field edge or anything like that, but like areas where deer would be traveling, or were you setting up for, like you said, you were setting up to try to kill a 4-year-old? So would these be sits where, like if you were in Iowa or other states, a lot of sits you set up for, a particular buck, or if there was a buck in the area, is going to be right there, and your odds of seeing deer are slim? Or were you setting up in on these terrain features just for deer movement?
Yeah, so, when I started getting serious into bow hunting all those years ago, one thing I learned is seeing deer and killing deer are 2 completely different things, right? So that's why you hear every once in a while you hear me say something like, I don't hunt field edges anymore. Mm-hmm. Well, because you can see deer on a field edge, but you may not be able to shoot them, right? So I've learned that I have a higher success rate with encounters. I'm going to see less deer, but I'm going to have more encounters with deer potentially in shooting range if I go inside the timber and find these terrain features and find the thick cover. So whenever I go into a hunt, specifically in Michigan, I was going to kill something. Like, that was my goal. I'm going in to kill. I'm not going into, there was no time for an observation sense. So I'm going in, finding what looks good, finding those terrain features, playing that wind, and then putting myself in a position that if a deer comes through this way, I'm gonna shoot it.
And so you said, you're managing your time. You said you've got kids and, wife and the family and the business and everything. Um, I guess what is the reaction from like your wife or your buddies or people around you when you say that you're going to take X amount of days off and leave Iowa to go hunt Michigan?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I got made fun of, for sure. But like, the wife was like, why are you wasting your time going to Michigan? She, every year she understands a little bit more and a little bit more. I had to tell her, listen, I'm going here for an experience. I'm going here to say, hey, I've hunted Michigan before, and although I haven't put in as much time to Michigan as a lot of people have, I wanted to go and experience it. And I could have went to South Dakota again, or I could have went to, Missouri or Illinois or Kansas or something like that. But, it was just through these random string of events, it was time for me to go to Michigan. And I got some grief from some people. And I guess I said, hey, I'm going to go do it. So.
Now, when you are like coming to a state like Michigan and you come here and you see what you've seen with deer, you have, heard all the talk about how bad it is and everything like that. I guess, what do you think, or do you even think or comment or anything like that on the way that Michigan is managing their deer herd? That's a big sore spot for us here on the podcast, and I know that there's a big, collective of hunters in Michigan that just absolutely are mind blown by how they can, our DNR can call this management, right?
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, I think just in every relationship, let's just say the hunting community and the DNR is a relationship, right? Every relationship is a two-way street. Hell, you can be mad at somebody and blame the problem on the DNR. But if you're that guy who is mad at the DNR but shoots 2 spike bucks in a year, well, you have no ground to stand on, right? So I think, I talked to one of my buddies up there on one of the Nine Finger podcasts, and he's like, it's a culture change. If you want Michigan to be like Iowa, there's a whole bunch of things that have to change. And why is Iowa so good? Well, there's, 250,000 less hunters in Iowa, maybe even more. And there are, so you guys have a huge population. You have way more hunters. Hunting is a bigger tradition in Michigan than it is in Iowa. And like, I don't feel like people are comparing apples to apples. Now, at the same time, I feel like there's some other things in play here. Like, why do you need to change it? Like, why can't you just go out and be happy with what you have? I mean, be happy with, the ability to shoot these deer and to shoot, right? So is it the fact that people want big bucks, or is it the fact that, because I'll tell you right now, I've talked to so many people throughout the years doing this podcast, there are probably equal amount of people who are mad at the DNR because they've never shot or seen a big buck, that are mad that if you, let's just say, impose antler restrictions in certain areas, that there's a group of people that will say, well, man, I had one opportunity to shoot a deer this year, and a small buck walked by, and if I shot it, it would be illegal. You know what I mean? So it's just a conversation that has to be had, and people get so defensive that it's like, my way is right, your way is wrong. Well, my way is right and your way is wrong, and no one wants to talk about it. So it's tough, man.
So Dan Johnson, Nine Finger Chronicles podcast, Sportsman's Nation, what would be your way? What would be your suggestion or what would be the way that you would start that conversation?
Man, I don't know. You got to have town hall meetings. You got to talk. You got to talk to landowners. You got to talk to all hunters. You got to get everybody on the same page. You got to get statistics from the DNR. You know, people. One thing that we have really good working here in Iowa, and I think you guys have it as well, is your deer reporting system, right? So you got to know the statistics in order to make some kind of law change. You got to know, do antler point restrictions, what does that help, right? Does it help? I don't know. What does it help? You know, does it just mean big bucks, you know, bigger bucks are gonna come through the area? I mean, there's a whole bunch of conversations that need to have. One thing that I really liked, I don't think Wisconsin does it anymore, but there was a earn a buck program where if you wanted to shoot a buck, you had to shoot a doe.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that, and I would have no problem with that if say Iowa went to something like that. But you know, every state is run by different people and different ideas, and I think the more that the hunters get involved, the better.
But I think somewhat we're in an echo chamber. You know, we surround ourselves with people who, you know, want to shoot bigger deer or whatever, and actually are going out and doing everything that they can to do that. And, you know, we've got just as much respect for the guy that gets the 1 or 2 days or the opening weekend off to hunt and, you know, just wants to get his buck as well, because that's part of the tradition and the, you know, the culture here in Michigan too, right? But the hard part is that there are, you know, when you say that you need to get the hunter involved, you know, we're also talking about the guy that gets his rifle out the day before the season and gets his bow out, you know, the day before the season, and guys that are, you know, not exactly having these conversations or that even care, you know. I mean, we've banned baiting in, you know, the entire lower peninsula, and yet the gas stations still have bait that you can buy, you know. So that culture, you know, the law doesn't really matter at that point to, you know, to some.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, what is the penalty for baiting in Michigan?
I think it's just a fine. I think it's like $250 or something like that.
At first,
so
yeah.
I heard it was way less than that, right? So I don't know, but it's crazy because, I mean, so you're breaking a tradition, right? You're breaking a way someone used to do something, and let's just say a law was passed that bow hunters had to stop doing a different thing, right? Because at one point, I think in Iowa, years ago, tree stand hunting was illegal. It was illegal to hunt from a tree stand. So now they, you know, what would happen if there was a crazy law that was now passed like that? Well, you got to adapt and you got to overcome. And as much as that guy who pulls his gun out may not be prepared for the season, he may know less about deer. The dude buys his hunting license just like you do. He has access to deer just like you do for the most part. And it sucks, but he's entitled to go out and hunt any way he wants to hunt and give any advice that he wants to give within the current law. So it's tough. Like I said, it's just a two-way street, man.
Oh yeah, and like I say, we've had this and it, like kind of like beat this horse to death.
But one of the problems is our reporting system is lacking. Like compared to the Ohio, like when we would go to Ohio, you know, obviously there's always going to be people that don't follow the rules. But for like us and all the guys that we know that have been down there, you shoot your deer, you call it in. You report like the county, what weapon, like if it was like a compound bow, a crossbow, you know, and then, you know, the time, everything. And so everyone does that. That's a great database. Michigan, I've been hunting. I'm 46 years old. I've been hunting since I was 12. I've never ever been pulled on, got a questionnaire. The only thing I've ever got questionnaires about was like the fall turkey seasons. That's it. Never been asked about my deer seasons. So it's like,
Have you ever reached out to your local DNR, your local state officials, and voiced your opinion there?
No, I have not. So,
Okay.
I'm on the other end of it, like what you were saying. Like, if you do
Yeah.
if you do what you've always done, then you're always gonna, be in that same boat. But we have talked to guys, like when we're at ATA, was it 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking to the guy about all the, the reporting system, and he's like, I can't remember his name.
His name was Tony Smith. But he was saying like how the reporting is so great in Michigan, and that, the way that they do it, because they send out these things, and then, at the deer check stations, well, you're not required to take it to a check station. So, I mean, the data is like going to be similar year over year, because the same people that go to the check station the year before are probably going to go the next year. But if you've never gone, like John, you probably won't go,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, it's mandatory in Iowa to report your deer.
Right. Like I said, I was just interested to see, because,
Yeah.
There's a lot of different factors, but a lot of the thought process is that, Wisconsin has big deer, Indiana has big deer, Ohio has big deer, and it's like we're surrounded by big deer, and Michigan is the laughing stock of the Midwest as far as whitetail goes. So,
yeah.
And you're right. We're not doing anything except for just sitting here bitching about it. And so it's like, those conversations need to be had, to start that in motion, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've still got those Michigan tags burning a hole in your pocket. Thanksgiving weekend's coming up. Are you headed up here to?
Yeah, they burned up. That's a fact. Well, I'll tell you what. Here's a funny story. So the last hunt of the trip, I'm coming out of the timber, and I'm digging through my stuff, putting it back in my truck. I'm like, where did my hoodie go? Where's my hoodie? So on a piece of public land, somewhere in Michigan, I'm not going to say where, because the guy who gives me the info beat my ass, is a Sitka Apex hoodie with Dan Johnson's Michigan license and tags in it. So if you find a hoodie, look in the front pocket, because it's mine.
So in Michigan here, right before the rifle opener, which was November 15th, our tag system went down, and they were allowing you to just write your own tag on a sheet of paper or print it off if you would like. So, I mean, you're off the hook on that one if you'd like to come back. But so I guess overall, your experience in Michigan was what you expected, better than you expected. I guess, what did you think as a whole?
I had fun, man. I had a blast getting back to the, not knowing what's out there. Anything could happen, For the most part in Iowa, I run the trail cameras and stuff. You kind of got a good idea of what's going to show up. But out there, I went back to my roots, right? I was going in blind, not knowing where anything was at, and that was fun, man. I met some really cool people. Saw some new terrain, and just hunted, man. It was fun.
And you had a interesting encounter with some Michiganders at the gas station on your way in.
Yeah, that's a funny story, and I will probably tell it at the beginning of every hunting season from now on. I pulled into a gas station, and there's a guy I'm filling up my truck. He's filling up his vehicle, and he looks over and he sees my license plate. He's from Iowa. He goes, "Iowa, huh? What are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I'm here to bow hunt." And the expression on his face just straight changed. And he looks at me and goes, "Are you fucking serious?" he was so confused why I would leave Iowa to come hunt Michigan. And he just kind of like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Are you deranged, man? So I got a kick out of that.
I mean, I think that's probably the overwhelming sentiment, right?
Well, that's
Right.
That's what I said when Adam was telling me about before we went on air. I was like, what? Why the hell would you leave Iowa to come to Michigan?
Absolutely.
And so, how has your hunting season been going so far outside of Michigan?
Yeah, man. So before Michigan, I went to South Dakota. I had a tag in my pocket, and then that out there you can hunt. You can shoot a whitetail or a mule deer, and a mule deer is really high on my list. And so I go out there, bounce around for like 5-6 days, and try to get in close to a good, respectable mule deer for the area, and it just didn't pan out. And I came to Michigan, did my thing there, and then kind of went on a hiatus for 2 weeks to get back to the home front, make everybody kind of happy, and then I started hunting late October here in Iowa, and passed up some good deer, and started doing my thing in Iowa, and played that game, chased the trail cameras for a while, put myself in the best positions on my farms, and play that game, play that chess match. And it's kind of funny, we all think that hunting revolves around this huge strategy, right? It's just like, all right, the wind's doing this, I need to slip in here, go here, come up here, tree stands here, thermals are going to do this, wind's doing this, buck's going to come from this way, he's going to loop around, he's going to scent check this bay. We think of all these things. And as I'm thinking about all these things and how I'm going to access the place that I want to go hunt this year, I see some pines pop up out of this little drainage area, and my wind's this buck. And long story short, I flipped my pack off in my tree stand, put my release on, drew back, stepped out from behind this tree, and shot this year's buck off of the ground, walking to my tree stand. So sometimes it's luck too.
So that being said, from the ground, when you're out in South Dakota and that spot and stock, my brother just got back from there.
Yeah.
What is a respectable mule deer? I mean, my brother killed, I think 2 years ago, he killed the 140s mule deer, which for us here in Michigan, is a big deer, but and mule deer as far as body wise are huge. So it was a big deer, but guys kill 200-inch deer, regularly on mule deer hunts. So, yeah. I mean, how does that even enter into the equation?
Yeah, it doesn't really. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing out there. I'm a brand new hunter when it comes to the world of spot and stock. All I knew what to do was get high and start glassing. And I didn't have any problems seeing deer, but moving in on them is where I started. I'd go, too slow, or I'd go too fast, or the wind would shift, or I made noise, or, one of 100 different things on all these stocks. And I just kept repeating what someone in my head kept saying was, if you one stalk a day on a deer, on a mule deer buck is a good day. So I just kept putting that into my head as kind of a foundation of what I was trying to accomplish out there. And although I didn't get, to launch an arrow, I did have almost one stalk a day on average, going into, coming out of that hunt. And I walked away from that hunt learning something. And the cool thing about this whole thing is I'm going back to South Dakota in December to try it again. So we will, the book hasn't been closed on this year on South Dakota yet.
Sweet.
So it's not exactly like Michigan then.
No. I bet you there was one morning where I sat on this really tall peak overlooking like these private land bottoms. I bet you I could see 200 deer from my point of view. It was really cool.
Yeah, that's one of I keep telling my brother that I'm gonna have to go out there with them, and I mean they just have a ball, just whitetail adrenaline style, and whatever they run into, be it a mule deer that they want to shoot, or there's a ton of good whitetail running around out there as well.
Yeah.
And so whatever they run into, they're flinging arrows and blowing stalks, and it's just a constant. So it does sound like a real fun and like a learning experience as well too.
So what is your bow setup?
So my bow setup right now, this year, I was debating between two old primes that I had. One was the Prime Logic, and one was the new CT3, the newer CT3. It's like a 33-inch axle, and that's what I went with this year. So I'm shooting my Prime. I got a ripcord rest with an HHA Kingpin sight, and let's see, I'm shooting Day 6 arrows, 4 fletch, with a Wasp jackhammer broadhead on the front.
Cool.
Okay. And then what are you using for like your mobile setups? You're a lone wolf guy, right? So.
Right. Yep. 4 sticks and a lone wolf will get me anywhere I need to go, man.
Perfect. So, other than the Michigan public land scavenger hunt from the Nine Finger Chronicles for I think the winning prize is a Sitka hoodie. What else do you have going on at the Nine Finger Chronicles and Sportsman's Nation? Where can everybody follow along with that stuff?
Yeah, man. If you want to follow along, just go to it's Sportsman's MENS sportsmansnation.com. That's the website. That's where all of our content comes out of. I mean, for those who don't know, the Sportsman's Nation is it's basically a collective, right? It's a collection of a variety of outdoor podcasts that are, bear hunting, fishing, turkey hunting. I mean, everything from strategery, right, to land management. We have a whole bunch of different topics that come through the network. And then my podcast, the Nine Finger Chronicles, is on there as well. And that's just, if you like listening to deer hunting, that is what you're going to get with that, right? Talk about deer hunting, talk about my Western, and all these people throughout the nation. I talk to people from Florida to Maine to California and everywhere in between about, hunting and all that good stuff. And social media, man, Nine Finger Chronicles or Sportsman's Nation, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, the next time you head up to Michigan, look us up and we can put you on some small deer, no problem.
Hey, man, I'll take anything I can get.
All righty, Dan. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, hey, had a blast, guys.
All right. Thanks.